Walk me through what is that inner code that somebody who's aiming at the I'm going to call the ease of Tate, right?
Yeah,
Get rich quick,
sure.
fast and flashy, not necessarily about long-term relationships, and then comparing to somebody like Marcus Aurelius, that's really about self-denial, anchoring, not giving into power.
I remember I understand that position very well because it wasn't that long ago that I was there. I remember I was 19 years old. Someone had recommended that I read Marcus Aurelius' Meditations. I was sitting in my college apartment. It arrived in the mail. I went and I got it and I sat down and I read it. And here you have the thoughts of the most powerful man in the world sort of explaining like his code, how a person should be, what a person should do, what greatness was, what goodness was, what virtue was. And I remember being struck so much by the this sense that like no one had ever talked to me this way before. My dad hadn't talked to me about this way. I hadn't really heard that in church or in school or on TV. There is this sense, I think, that like kids will just figure it out. People will just figure it out. Or that, it's obvious. And it's not obvious. People need guidance. They need structure. They need advice. Like it's absurd that you would just expect them to figure this stuff out by trial and error, because you can end up going down these blind alleys. It could take you years to find out that, hey, this trait you picked up, this way of living isn't actually the right one or isn't working for you. It's not as meaningful as you think it was. So what so struck me about the Stoics was that it answered this same question that I think people are feeling like the Andrew Tates or random YouTubers or TikTokers are answering, which is like, how should I be? Like, what is the good life? Right? What do I need to do in the world to get ahead? Or how do I prevent myself from being taken advantage of or being weak or failing, right? Like, how do I deal with this hole that I have inside me? And I think it's a shame that we don't think of philosophy as a way to address those existential questions, because that's fundamentally what philosophy was from the very beginning. Today we think of philosophers as like somebody who works in the philosophy department at Harvard, or we think of some unpronounceable German name. But Socrates is walking around trying to answer the questions about knowledge and wisdom and insight and goodness. Diogenes, famously walks around with his lantern and he says, "Show me a good man." He's looking for that kind of person. The founding of Stoicism, Zeno is this successful young merchant. He inherits the family business, suffers a shipwreck. He washes up on shore in Athens, having lost everything. And he walks into this bookstore, and the bookseller is reading the works of Socrates, right? One of the dialogues of Socrates. And he walks up to the bookseller and he goes, "Where can I find a man like that?" And the bookseller points to this cynic philosopher named Crates, and that sets Zeno on this mission, right? He's lost everything. He doesn't know where to go. He doesn't know what to do. And philosophy is that light. It is that North Star. And so
I want to really put a point on that for a second, because as I was researching for this episode, I took a whole bunch of sort of journal style notes on the idea of philosophy.
yeah,
So I think that we all have a God-shaped hole in us.
yes,
And it has been, I'm not even sure how to categorize what's happened to religion, because in some ways we're like becoming more religious, but in other ways it really does feel somewhat empty, and it feels like there's a huge fragmentation. And so there is no one galvanizing sense of who you ought to be and what you ought to become. And
right.
so,
And religion is political now, as opposed to a guide to living in the world, which is what it was supposed to be, 2,000 years ago. You think of the 10 Commandments, right? It's like, do this, don't do this, right? And philosophy and religion were intertwined, right?
aren't they one and the same? It's
Of
just
course.
one is backed up by a deity and one is not.
I mean, what I mean this more literally, like Paul is known as Paul of Tarsus. St. Paul was known before he becomes St. Paul as Paul of Tarsus. And Tarsus is the center of Stoic philosophy. It leaves Athens and it goes to Tarsus. And he studies Stoic philosophy, right? And Christianity absorbs a bunch of the ideas from Stoic philosophy, which I think, because I lost the thread a little bit, but like you said, what is the code, right? What is the code for living that philosophy teaches us?
Well, so we're back with Zeno. He's been on the shipwreck. The reason that I wanted to really drill that point home is, so I started this by saying my heart bleeds for the people that feel lost and inadequate.
Yeah.
And why does my heart bleed for them? Because I've been there. I know intimately what that's like. For me, I found Taoism, and then business forced me into something probably more like Stoicism. But when you begin to create a category of thought in your mind about how things ought to be, how you ought to be, and you start steering towards that, then you can create meaning and purpose in your life.
Yes.
And so now all of a sudden, and I mean, look, this is a straight quote from the Stoics, you can't control what happens to you, but you can control how you react.
Yes.
And so that's what's so fascinating about that moment is you've got this guy that had everything, loses it in a shipwreck, and whether it's apocryphal or not, like imagine him dripping wet as he walks into the bookstore, you know, and is like, how do I reconceptualize of my life now?
Yeah. It's the moment in Fight Club when his apartment gets blown up and he loses everything, and he's having to look at life with new eyes for the first time. And Zeno would say later, he would joke, he says, you know, I lose everything. He says, I made a great fortune when I suffered a shipwreck, because he lost everything financially. He lost everything as far as his identity goes, his work, his sort of family's legacy. And what he finds is philosophy. He finds this code of living. And Zeno is the first of the Stoic philosophers to articulate the four virtues, which Stoicism is built around: courage, self-discipline, justice, and wisdom, which also any Christian would recognize as the cardinal virtues. So Stoicism and Christianity share the same underlying operating system, if you will. One says that God gave it to us, and maybe the Stoics would say it's from the gods, or they would say it's from, you know, our ruling reason, our rational sense. I think it doesn't really matter. What matters is that those are four traits, four bedrock values that you can build a great and a good life around: courage, self-discipline, justice, and wisdom. Every situation, good or bad in life, every moment, big or small, one or all of those virtues is appropriate, is demanded, right? Everything the Stoics would say is an opportunity to practice one of those virtues. So, you know, famously, when Marcus Aurelius is talking about how the obstacle is the way, he's not saying that, hey, this shipwreck is awesome. He's saying that this shipwreck is an opportunity to practice one or more of the Stoic virtues. This betrayal by your business partner is an opportunity to practice one or more of these four Stoic virtues, right? This loss of a family member, this horrible war you're in the middle of, right? Also, this incredible success. You just become the emperor of Rome. Courage, self-discipline, justice, wisdom, all of that and more is demanded of you. And so, like, the Stoicism isn't a list of commandments, do this, don't do that, but it is these sort of four bedrock values which you're supposed to build your life and your decisions and your individual actions around and towards.
The thing that I find, so I don't believe in God, but I so relate to the idea of that sense of there is a hole in me and I need something to fill it. And for me, I think all of this, whether it's religion, whether it's philosophy, what it's trying to get at is evolution has planted these drivers, algorithms in your mind,
Sure.
and there's just no escaping them.
Yeah.
And the reason there's no escaping them is they are the things that you have to do in order to survive long enough to have kids that have kids.
Yeah.
And so the epitaph on my tombstone ought to read, "You're having a biological experience." And what I want people to understand is
death is a biological experience.
100%.
Yeah.
And whether God gave us evolution in the body, whether this is all a simulation, none of it matters.
Sure.
what it boils down to is the way that you interface with life, the way we interface with each other, most importantly, the way we interface with ourselves
Yeah.
is pre-programmed. Like you are going to feel some kind of way. You are going to be prone to love. You are going to be
Sure.
prone to jealousy. You are going to be prone to envy, joy, all of it. Like
Yeah.
the human experience, as varied as it is so narrow when you compare us to other animals and what they go through. And once people realize that, and you realize, okay, there is no way to escape certain pressures.
Yeah.
And so now, whatever philosophy that you have ought to align with the things that are going to make you, I would say, fulfilled.
Yes.
So I'll round it to human flourishing, right?
Yep.
So to me, something you've said, and the note that I took even before we started is, you need a North Star. There
Yeah.
needs to be something that you're aiming at. And so, I hold up Andrew Tate and Marcus Aurelius as two potential North Stars, as a bundle of ways of approaching the world, of deciding what to value, of deciding what to believe. But which one of those you choose, one is going to be more aligned with the algorithms that you already have running in your mind, and thusly are going to lead you to a life of more fulfillment. It's probably worth me defining what I mean by fulfillment. So to me, fulfillment is the only neurochemical state that is pleasant and can survive something like grief. Because joy or happiness does not survive grief. You cannot be joyful and grieving at the same time. But I think, curious to see if you agree with that, I think that you can be fulfilled and grieving at the same time. So I think fulfillment has a recipe. And that recipe is, you must work really hard. Like, that nature is going to ensure that you work really hard and that is pleasurable, and that you have a sense of dis-ease if you don't, because otherwise you're going to die in an evolutionary context. So you must work really hard to gain a set of skills that you enjoy for whatever reason, that allow you to serve not only yourself, but the group.
Yeah.
And so that recipe, to me, is everything, whether it's Stoic, whether it's Taoism, whether it's Christianity, Islam, whatever, it's the one that's going to win is going to be the one that most aligns you with the things that make you feel grounded, like you have meaning and purpose, you feel secure and worthwhile, all the things that I lament for people that feel lost and inadequate.
If you like that clip, check out another powerful clip right here, and I'll see you there.